They say that on certain nights, when the moon slips behind the gauze of clouds and the river runs like silver beneath the darkened sky, you can hear her voice, a distant wail carried by the mist. It is not a cry of rage nor a scream of terror. No, it is something else entirely. A sound too soft to be a warning, yet too sorrowful to be ignored. A woman's voice dripping with longing. It pulls you like a current. You do not know if you want to flee from it or fall into it. She is not of the living, nor is she fully dead. She exists in the spaces between, in the sigh of reeds stirred by no wind, in the gleam of tears never shed. Her name is La Llorona, the weeping woman, but names are too small to hold what she has become. No one remembers when the story began. Perhaps she was always there, older than the rivers that carry her name. Perhaps she was once flesh, warm and soft, lips red with laughter, and skin lit by firelight. But now she is water, and echo, and darkness, a myth woven into every hush of the wind and every lullaby whispered by mothers who hope their daughters will never love too deeply. She does not walk, she glides. Her hair, black as spilled ink, flows behind her like a veil torn from time. Her dress clings to her like a second skin, translucent with river water, the hem never dry. Her face, no one has truly seen it. Some say it is beautiful beyond comprehension. Others say it is hollowed by grief, a mask of pain. But all agree on her eyes. Wet with endless tears, they shine like moonlight on wet stone, wide with remembering. The river is her home, not just one, but all rivers. Wherever water winds to land, wherever it sings to the night and kisses the banks, she is near. She waits in the dark reeds, in the whispering currents. She leans over bridges long forgotten, and lingers beneath willow trees whose roots know her name. The scent of wet earth and jasmine follows her, the scent of sorrow dressed as beauty. There is a softness to her presence, like a lullaby hummed through the veil of a dream. And there is danger, a danger wrapped in sweetness, like poisoned honey. For La Llorona does not simply weep, she lures. She reaches for those who wander too close to her waters, those whose hearts echo her own emptiness. She whispers to them, her voice curling into their ears like smoke. Come closer, just a little more. And they do. Oh, how they do. The villagers who live near rivers teach their children to listen, not just with ears, but with their blood. They tell them, if you hear crying in the night, do not answer. If a woman in white appears near the water, do not look into her eyes. If your feet begin to move without your will, if your breath grows shallow and your skin turns cold, run, for that is how she finds you, not through force, but through yearning, through something in you that already longs to surrender. But not all fear her. Some speak of her in softer tones, as if recalling a dream too beautiful to wake up from. They say she was once in love, madly, entirely, fatally in love, that her story is not one of evil, but of endless ache. They imagine her in younger days, her laughter spilling like wine, her hands pressing wildflowers to her chest. They see her dancing near the river, the one she would later haunt, her eyes filled with the man she adored. And in this vision, she is not a ghost. She is a woman on fire with life. But love is a fragile thing. It can lift like wings or drown like stone. And somewhere in that perfect blaze, something turned, something shattered. The river that once mirrored her joy began to hold her pain. It remembers her story. It carries it forward, even now, in every ripple and current. The water knows, and the water never forgets. Still, she comes back. Night after night, century after century, she comes back to the river, as if seeking a different ending. She comes not only to grieve, but to touch, to taste, to feel even for a breath something she lost long ago. The world forgets, but she remembers everything. Every kiss, every promise, every betrayal. They say her tears can bless or curse, that to hear her weep is to be marked by sorrow or by love or both. Some lovers, desperate and drunk on desire, go to the river on purpose, hoping she will appear. They offer flowers, wine, songs. Some return pale and hollow-eyed, touched by something they cannot explain. Others do not return at all. They slip into the water, into her arms, and whether they drowned or were embraced is a matter of belief. There are stories, too, of her touch healing the broken. A man who lost his wife claims that La Llorona wept beside him all night, and when dawn came, he no longer wanted to die. A woman alone in the woods heard her whisper secrets so tender they stitched her heart back together. And yet these are the dangerous stories, the ones that seduce, that soften the fear. Because the truth is this: La Llorona is not just a spirit of sadness. She is not merely mourning. She is the embodiment of love stretched too far, of grief that becomes something else, something with hands and lips and hunger. She is beauty that clings like damp silk. She is pain that whispers sweetly. She is every woman who was left, abandoned, betrayed, and who could not bear it. She is the scream that was never heard, the cry that was ignored, the sacrifice made in silence. And perhaps that is why we still tell her story. Not because we fear her, but because we understand her. Because in the dark corners of ourselves we too have wept by rivers. We have wandered in the night, searching for something lost. We have loved too much. We have wanted too deeply. And sometimes, just sometimes,
We have imagined what it would be like to let go, to become something vast and voiceless, to dissolve into mist and memory and myth. And so we listen. We listen for the weeping. On nights when the sky holds its breath and the world seems suspended in silence, we pause near water's edge. The wind shifts. The reeds lean. And we swear, we hear her. Just a sound. Just a whisper. A woman still waiting. A name on the water. La Llorona.
Before she was mist and morning, she was flesh. Her name was once whispered with reverence, not fear. They called her Maria, though even then it was not the sound of the name that mattered. It was how it felt on the tongue, like velvet, like wine, smooth, slow, dangerous. Her presence could silence a room, not because she demanded attention, but because she breathed beauty. Not the cold kind, the unreachable kind. No, Maria's beauty was warm, close. You could almost touch it, and many longed to. She lived near the river, in a modest house with a garden of wild marigolds that tangled through the fence and spilled onto the dirt path. She was neither rich nor poor, neither noble nor forgotten. The village saw her as one of their own, but not quite. Maria carried a mystery in her, like a secret the wind refused to share. There was a softness to her movements, like she was always listening to something only she could hear. Her laughter was rare but unforgettable. When she laughed, it was not from the throat, but from the belly, the hips, the soles of her bare feet. It filled the air like a storm coming across open water, sudden, alive, full of promise. She sang to the flowers when she thought no one was near. She kissed the cheeks of children and placed her hands on the hearts of animals who had forgotten how to trust. And yet she was not innocent, not in the way men like to imagine. Maria's innocence was not the absence of desire, it was the purity of it. She loved without caution. She believed without armor. Her heart was made not of glass, but of open flame. She wanted everything: joy, devotion, skin on skin, the sound of her name whispered at midnight. She wanted to be chosen, seen, devoured with both eyes and hands. And then he came. He did not arrive with thunder, nor with fanfare. He rode into the village at dusk, a man cloaked in dust and silence. The son of a Spanish merchant, they said, a man from the cities beyond the mountains. His name was Santiago. He wore fine clothes that hung loose from the journey and boots that whispered wealth. His voice was low and careful, his hands calloused in contradiction to his gold-ringed fingers. He smelled of leather, cedar, and foreign lands. Maria saw him before anyone else did. She was gathering water at the river's edge, her sleeves rolled up, the hem of her dress dark with wet earth. He passed by on horseback, and she turned, not shyly, not boldly, but with that same unknowable calm that always lived behind her eyes. Their gazes met. Something passed between them, a silence that hummed like a plucked string. He did not smile, neither did she. but the world shifted. In the days that followed, he returned often. He asked questions he already knew the answers to, just to hear her voice. She answered simply, but her eyes lingered a little longer each time. They met at the market, at the chapel, beneath the shade of fig trees. They began to speak in half-sentences and pauses thick with meaning. He brought her gifts she never asked for, ripe peaches, silk ribbons, a comb of carved bone. She gave him things without names, glances, silences, touches that made his breath catch. The village watched and whispered. Some warned her, others envied her. A man like him, educated, wealthy, of Spanish blood, was not meant for a girl like Maria. But Maria didn't care. She saw beyond his name, beyond the cut of his coat. She saw the sadness in him, the hunger he didn't show. He was not cruel, not yet. He was charming, in that careful, disarming way that feels like love when it first arrives. They met in secret, at first. The river became their witness. Beneath its murmuring, their bodies found each other. There was nothing shy about their desire. It burned, fast and full. His hands tangled in her hair. Her lips left marks on his chest. They clung to each other like drowning souls in a world that would never let them stay afloat. When he kissed her, it was not possession, it was surrender. When she moaned, it was not shame, it was prayer. She loved him, entirely, foolishly. He whispered promises against her skin, of marriage, of cities he would take her to, of children they would raise under almond trees. She believed him. How could she not? Every night he came to her like tide to shore, and every morning she woke with his scent still clinging to her thighs. Time passed, and she bore him 2 children, boys with his eyes, her mouth. She thought they would seal their fate, make it undeniable. A family, a future. But something shifted, slowly at first. He became distracted, distant. His visits grew fewer, his kisses colder. He no longer brought gifts, he no longer stayed the night. She asked nothing. She smiled through the fear building in her chest like rot beneath a blossom. Then the truth arrived, brutal and uninvited. He was to marry another, a woman of rank, of land, of blood considered more worthy. A decision made for him, perhaps, or maybe one he had always known he would make. Maria found out through the mouths of others, not his own. He never came to say goodbye. Her heart broke. Yes. But more than that, it unraveled. She waited by the river night after night, her sons curled against her breast, her hair tangled in sorrow. She told herself he would return, that love could not vanish like smoke. But the days bled into weeks, and the river gave her no answers. Still, she loved him. That was the tragedy. Not the betrayal, not the lies, but the fact that her love remained hot, raw, consuming. It pulsed through her even as he disappeared. It burned in her hands, in her milk-heavy breasts, in the lullabies she could no longer sing. She loved him still, and it hurt more than hate ever could. And yet, what could she do with love that had no place to land? What do you do with fire when the hearth is gone? Maria's beauty began to change. Not dim, not fade, but sharpen. Her eyes, once soft, became deep pools of shadow. Her body, still lush and aching, moved differently, like a flame curled inward. The villagers said she walked like a woman in a dream. Others said she no longer spoke, only listened. To the river, to the night, to something none of them could hear. Her children were her only tether. Little voices, soft hands, the curve of their cheeks like reminders of what she had once believed. She held them tighter each day, kissed them harder, sang to them with a desperation too close to prayer. They were her blood, his blood, proof that she had not imagined the love, proof that something real had bloomed before it withered. But love, when left to rot, turns into something else. A sharpness, a shadow, a storm waiting beneath the skin. And Maria was beginning to change.
Love does not die in silence. It dies screaming, inside where no one can hear it. And for Maria, the scream began as a whisper, a breath of cold air in the middle of an embrace, a moment's hesitation in the hands that once held her like lifeblood. At first, she ignored it. What is a single chill when the body remembers warmth? What is a pause when the lips still taste like longing? But the change was there, in his absence more than in his presence. Santiago no longer came with stories in his mouth and flowers in his hands, no longer lingered after love had undone them both. He left quickly now, as if chased by guilt, or worse, indifference. Maria watched him disappear into the dusk, again and again, clutching her sons to her chest like shields against the truth. Still, she loved him. Still, she waited. Each night, she bathed in the river, smoothing her hair, pinching her cheeks for color, wrapping herself in the silk he once gifted her. She wore his favorite scent, orange blossom and clove. And when he didn't come, she sat by the window with a candle flickering beside her, whispering his name like prayer, like spell, like the echo of a song only she remembered. And he did come, occasionally, when the weight of his new life grew too heavy, or when the taste of her lingered too long in his mouth. He would arrive after midnight, smelling of wine and regret. His kiss was rushed now, his hands impatient, his words sparse. But Maria still opened for him like a flower caught in eternal spring. Her body betrayed her. It knew him, wanted him, even as her soul began to recoil. Their lovemaking was no longer tender. It was frantic, feral. She clung to him like someone drowning, pressed her mouth to his as if trying to pull truth from his breath. He took her roughly, desperately, like a man at war with his own desires. When he was inside her, she almost believed in everything again. But when he rolled away, when the warmth left the bed, she stared at the ceiling, and wept without sound. The betrayal came not with a blade, but with a whisper. She heard it at the market first, a conversation between two women unaware of her presence. His wedding had been announced. A celebration was being planned. Maria did not speak. She did not cry. She only turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last. She returned home to her sons, her garden, the river. But something inside her had split. There was no scene, no confrontation. Santiago never came again, not to explain, not to apologize. The door that once creaked open with hope stayed closed, and still Maria waited. Every evening she brushed her hair and wrapped herself in his silk. Every evening she lit the candle, but now her reflection in the window grew stranger, her eyes darker, her mouth thinner. She looked less like a woman, more like a question. The villagers noticed. She no longer smiled. Her laughter, that golden sudden joy, vanished. Her garden began to wilt. The children in the village stopped calling her name. Mothers pulled them close when she passed. Whispers bloomed like mold. Words like mad, abandoned, dangerous, floated through streets she had once walked with grace.
But it was not madness. It was grief, the kind that coils deep in the belly and claws upward, the kind that tastes like metal on the tongue, the kind that leaves you hollow, even as you walk, speak, breathe. She held her sons more tightly now, as if they were her last tether to the world. She sang to them in a low, trembling voice, songs from her childhood, songs her mother had sung beside the fire. They reached for her, small hands grasping, still warm with trust. She kissed their foreheads and told them stories of rivers and stars, of love that never ended. But in the quiet, she wondered, how can love survive when it has nowhere to go? How does a heart continue beating when it is only filled with ache? She began to dream of water, of deep black rivers that whispered her name, of hands reaching up not to pull her down, but to hold her, comfort her, embrace her like no man ever had. In her dreams, the river was soft, a lover, a mother, a release. She would wake with her nightdress soaked in sweat, her skin chilled, her breath shallow. The river called her, and she began to answer. She walked to it each night after the children had fallen asleep. She stepped into the shallows, let the water kiss her ankles, her calves, her thighs. She closed her eyes and imagined Santiago's hands replaced by the current. The way the river held her was gentler, more honest. It did not pretend, it did not leave. She began to speak to it aloud, words full of yearning, sorrow, fury. I gave him everything, she whispered, everything. I was enough. I loved him. And then, why wasn't that enough? One night,
Her oldest son awoke and found her missing. He followed the moonlight to the river's edge and saw her standing there, arms lifted to the stars, hair loose and wild. She turned slowly, her eyes glowing with something he did not understand. She smiled at him, soft, sorrowful, and then she wept, long and low, a sound that would stay with him forever, a sound that was not quite human. After that night, something inside her shifted. She became quiet, too quiet. Her kisses to her sons grew longer, as if she was memorizing their scent, the shape of their faces. She touched them constantly, brushing their hair, holding their hands, cradling them while they slept. She was trying to hold on, but the pain had grown teeth. The sensuality she once radiated had turned inward, coiled around her spine like smoke. Her beauty was no longer the beauty of desire, but of something raw, primal. She no longer belonged to the village, to her body, even to her name. She belonged to the ache, to the betrayal, to the river. Each day the weight of abandonment grew heavier. Each night the need for release grew stronger. She walked the banks barefoot, her dress soaked and clinging to her like skin she could not shed. She murmured his name into the reeds. She pressed her face into the water and cried until the river wept with her. She was no longer a woman. She was longing made flesh, desire left to rot, devotion that had curdled into despair. And no one, not the stars, not the wind, not even the river, answered her. Yet she still begged, she still waited, she still loved him.
It happened on a night where the moon drowned in clouds and the wind refused to speak. The river was still, as if it too had been holding its breath for her. The world was quiet, too quiet, like the moment before a candle dies. Maria stood barefoot at the water's edge, her long white dress clinging to her like a second skin, soaked from her nightly pilgrimage. Her dark hair trailed behind her, heavy with river mist and sorrow. She held her sons by the hand, one on each side. Their small fingers curled around hers, trusting, sleepy, warm. They did not understand the depth of the silence in their mother's chest, the way her heart no longer beat with hope, only memory. She had not spoken for hours, but they were used to her silences by now. Her oldest leaned into her hip, yawning, eyes soft with love. Her youngest looked up at the stars, humming to himself. Maria looked at them, and for a moment, just a breath, she hesitated. Their faces were painted with stardust, their lashes long, their cheeks flushed with life. They smelled of milk and wildflowers and dreams she had once believed in. They were hers, entirely hers. Her womb had carved them from blood and heat and longing. They had been her purpose when love abandoned her, her reason to keep breathing. But in that moment, the river whispered louder. It spoke to her not in words, but in aching waves of emotion. It told her, "You are already lost. You are already gone. Let it end. Let it all end." And then the scream. It erupted from her like a tidal wave breaking through flesh, a sound so primal it did not belong to this world. The boys clutched her hands tighter, startled, but she was no longer with them. Her eyes rolled back, her lips moved with words not her own. The river had taken her in, made her its vessel. She stepped forward, one foot into the current, then another. The boys followed without question. The water was cold, biting, climbing up their legs like fingers. The wind picked up, carrying her hair into a black halo. Her breath came in gasps, her eyes wide, her mouth trembling. She knelt into the river until it touched her chest, until the water kissed the lips that had once been kissed by Santiago. And then she took them. Her hands, those hands that once cradled their tiny heads, that had braided their hair, fed them, held them through fevers and fears, turned to iron. She gripped them by the shoulders and pushed, not gently, not slowly. She pushed. The river swallowed their cries first, then their mouths, then their eyes. The struggle was brief, too brief. The children had never known fear from her, never expected pain. Their little bodies fought, legs kicking, arms flailing, but she held them down, her own body shaking, her soul splitting like cracked porcelain. Her tears mingled with the river, salt to fresh, love to loss. When it was done, she stood in the water, her dress floating around her like a shroud. Her hands trembled at her sides. Her lips were pale. She stared at the spot where the ripples had calmed, where silence had returned. And only then did she understand what she had done. The world collapsed inward. She fell to her knees, mouth open in a soundless cry. Her body shook with the fury of 1,000 storms, and still she could not scream loud enough. The river, now still and glassy, reflected her face back to her, a face she no longer recognized. It was not Maria who knelt there. It was something broken, twisted, eternal. She clawed at the water, searching for them, her hands slicing through the surface in desperate swirls. She called their names over and over, her voice raw, her throat bleeding with grief.
Mi amor, mis hijos, ven aquí, mamá está aquí. But there was no answer, only the gentle lap of water, like the soft breath of a murderer sleeping. She stumbled out of the river, collapsing onto the muddy bank. The earth clung to her skin, her dress torn, her knees bruised. She dragged herself forward, her body half alive, her mind untethered. The stars blinked coldly above her. The moon remained hidden. Nothing lit her sorrow. Nothing eased her agony. She wandered, screaming, weeping, ripping at her dress, at her hair, at her chest. She tore the silk Santiago had given her until it hung in tatters. She screamed his name into the wind over and over until it lost all meaning, until it sounded like a curse. And then silence, a silence so vast it felt like death. She collapsed beneath a tree, her body curled like a child's, trembling. The river, calm once more, shimmered beside her. It had taken her sons, her sanity, her soul. But it offered her something too, a promise, a release. She crawled to it, her limbs heavy, her breath shallow. She leaned forward, her lips barely brushing the surface. And in that moment, she died. Not in body, but in everything else. The woman named Maria vanished into the water, her final breath trailing behind her like fog. Her heartbeat stilled, her soul unraveled. The river opened itself to her, pulling her beneath its surface like a lover claiming his bride. But she did not drown. The river did not kill her. It remade her. In its depths she became something else. Not woman, not ghost, not quite divine. She was longing made eternal, grief shaped into skin. Her hair darkened further, cascading behind her like waves of mourning. Her dress, once soft and white, turned to shadow and silk and sorrow. Her eyes no longer held light, but they glowed with pain, endless, echoing pain. Her voice returned, but it was no longer hers. It came from everywhere at once, from the river, from the mist, from the broken-hearted, a wail that chilled the bone and seduced the soul, a cry that reached into the dreams of men and whispered their guilt into waking. La Llorona was born, and with her birth a curse. She rose from the riverbank, weightless, untethered. Her feet never touched the earth again. She drifted through the night like a forgotten prayer, her cries trailing behind her like smoke. She called for her children, not to find them, for she knew they were gone, but to find the echo of who she had been, to find the woman she lost to love. Now she walks the river banks. Now she weeps beneath bridges, behind trees, behind silent waters, and those who hear her feel something twist inside them, not just fear, but recognition, because her grief is universal, her hunger is human. Her scream lives in every soul who has ever loved and lost, who has given everything and been left empty. Water is not just water now. It is memory. It is womb and grave. It is the place she returns to again and again in search of forgiveness or justice, or something deeper still.
She is La Llorona. Not a ghost, not a woman, but something holy in her sorrow, something unclean in her beauty. And the river, her lover, her judge, her cradle, will carry her forever.
She is no longer a woman, not in the way flesh and breath define one. Her body has dissolved into shadow and silk, into water and weeping. She drifts now, an echo stretched over centuries, wrapped in the thin veil between this world and the next. But she is still beautiful, achingly so, terribly so, not with youth or warmth, but with a beauty sharpened by grief, made radiant by loss. Her presence is like moonlight seen through tears, luminous, distant,
haunting. They call her La Llorona, the weeping woman, the one who wanders the rivers barefoot and pale, searching for something she will never find. Her voice curls through the night like smoke, like longing. It is not always a scream. Sometimes it is a moan, a whisper, a breath that brushes the back of your neck when you're alone and unsure why the air feels suddenly colder. She appears when the wind dies down and the world holds its breath. She walks through reeds without bending them. Her dress floats behind her as if under water, never quite touching the earth. Her black hair clings to her skin like seaweed, her face hidden in shadows, except for her eyes. Eyes that glisten like wet stone, eyes that see through the soul. Some swear she has no face at all. Others say she wears the same expression she had in her final breath, a mouth open in sorrow, eyes wide with horror and regret. No one sees her the same way. To children, she is fear wrapped in lace, the punishment that waits for disobedience. Parents warn them, don't go near the water at night, or La Llorona will take you. And the children listen, not because they fully believe, but because something in the wind tells them it's true. The river speaks to them in rustles and murmurs, and they know not to answer back. To lovers, she is a warning, the ghost of desire gone wrong. She reminds them that passion can wound, that love can rot, that beauty is not always salvation. Some whisper that she appears to men who are unfaithful, luring them with her song. They say her voice drips like honey, that she whispers their names in the dark, promises them softness, redemption, ecstasy. And when they follow her, when they wade into the water, mesmerized, they vanish. Sometimes they are found, their faces frozen in longing or terror. Other times they are never found at all. To the broken-hearted she is kin. They do not fear her, they understand her. They see her not as monster, but as mirror. They hear her crying and weep with her, sitting by the river bank with hands clasped, eyes closed, hearts cracked wide open. They feel her fingers brush their hair, their cheeks. Some say she speaks to them, not with words, but with sensation. A warmth in the chest, a pulse of understanding, a reminder that sorrow, no matter how vast, is never truly solitary. La Llorona does not speak of what she did. She does not explain. She does not ask forgiveness. Her existence is not apology. It is consequence, a living wound that walks, a myth shaped from guilt, grief, and unbearable love. She doesn't seek redemption. She seeks only what was lost, her children, herself, the dream of a life that never came true. But the river never gives back what it takes. And so she walks, night after night, age after age. She appears in different lands by different waters. Her story shifts with the tongues that tell it, but her essence remains unchanged. Always the woman in white, always the weeping, always the feeling, just behind the heart, that someone is calling you from the dark.
Some say she appears before tragedy as a herald of sorrow. Others say she is drawn to those who carry pain in their bones, the ones who cry without knowing why. There are tales of her visiting the dying, placing a hand on their forehead, whispering lullabies until they slip into silence. These stories say she is mercy wrapped in mourning, that her tears are blessings, not curses. But not everyone agrees. There are those who claim she hates, that her soul, twisted by betrayal, now craves vengeance. They say she drags unfaithful men into the depths, drowns children who wander too far, curses those who do not respect the dead. They say she is the spirit of consequence itself, the shadow that follows cruelty and abandonment. And still, she is adored, feared, yes, but also romanticized, worshipped, desired. Artists paint her silhouette beneath silver moons, poets write verses about the sweetness in her sorrow, the elegance in her rage. Her story is sung in ballads and whispered in confessions. She has become something more than myth. She is archetype, spirit, symbol. The divine feminine in her most wounded form, the dark goddess of love, too deep to survive. And in this, she is eternal. She exists not just in rivers, but in memories, in lullabies, in dreams that end in tears. She haunts language itself. Any time we speak of broken hearts, of beauty lost, of love that costs too much. There are those who claim to have seen her clearly. A woman driving alone on a desert road at midnight swears she saw a figure beside a dry riverbed. Pale dress, eyes glowing. She pulled over, trembling, and the figure approached, but vanished just before touching the car. The air was cold for hours. A boy, too young to understand grief, sat crying near a stream after his mother died. He said a lady with wet hair sang to him, held him close, told him not to be afraid. He said she smelled like jasmine and rain. When his father found him, the boy was dry, but clutched a strand of black hair in his hand. These stories are passed along, embroidered with fear or wonder, depending on who tells them. But one thing never changes: the sound. That long, low wail that wraps around your spine and plants something cold at the base of your skull. That "Ay, mis hijos," so full of sorrow it could split the sky. No one forgets that sound. Even those who claim they don't believe. Even those who say it's just a tale. Because in the deepest part of the night, when the wind dies and the water runs quiet, we all hear it, that single aching cry, and something in us responds, not with logic, not with fear, but with recognition. We know her because we have been her.
We have stood on the banks of something vast and wept for what we could not reclaim. We have loved someone who vanished. We have held on to ghosts. And so she remains, not as punishment, but as memory, as warning, as longing made legend. La Llorona walks still, and wherever water weeps, so does she.
Close your eyes now. Can you hear her? She does not scream, not this time, not in this telling. She does not rage, she mourns, softly, sensually. Her sorrow is a caress, a silk ribbon brushing the skin of the soul. It clings to you, not like terror, but like memory, like something once whispered into your ear long ago, just before dawn, by someone who was already slipping away. She is not merely a ghost. She is the ache between love and madness, the final breath before the fall. She is every goodbye that came too soon, every child you dreamed of but never held, every lover whose absence you still taste in the quiet of night. La Llorona is not just one woman. She is all of us. She is the face you see in the river when you cry and don't understand why. She is the scent that blooms behind you when no one else is near. She is the reason the hair rises on your neck when you pass still water at dusk. You may not believe in her, not with your intellect, but your blood remembers her. Your heart beats in rhythm with hers, slow, wet, grieving. She is not legend. She is longing given shape. Let us not reduce her to punishment, nor mock her with fear. La Llorona is pain transformed into ritual, loss turned into poetry. She walks not to terrorize, but to remind. She is the soul's reminder that love, once broken, echoes forever. That passion unanchored becomes tide, that some things, once shattered, sing more beautifully than they ever did whole. Can you feel her now? Not as story, but as sensation. Her story begins like many others, a woman in love, a mother with open arms, a heart burning too brightly. But unlike most, her fire consumed everything until only water remained. She loved, and in that love she lost herself. She sacrificed her children, or her sanity, or both. The myths argue, but the truth is not in the details. The truth is in the feeling. Grief this deep doesn't need facts. There is something sacred in her sorrow, something holy in her weeping. She does not need a temple. She walks through her own prayer. With each footstep across the banks, she offers a benediction to the broken-hearted, and though she will never be healed, her wound has become legend, shared by countless voices, carried by wind and water alike. Ask yourself this: why has she lasted so long? Why does this story linger in every culture that knows rivers, women, and mourning? Why do people see her face even when they don't know her name?
Because there is something true in her. Because deep down we understand. There is a point at which love becomes a burden too heavy to carry. And when it breaks, when it spills, It does not disappear. It changes form. It becomes water, whisper, myth. She is a goddess of thresholds, of motherhood and madness, of yearning and consequence, of the thin, trembling line between tenderness and destruction. And that is why she is sensual, not in the way of desire seeking pleasure, but in the way of touch, of closeness, of vulnerability. Her sensuality is feeling itself, naked and raw, the skin before it hardens, the breath before it breaks, the body trembling not from passion, but from too much memory. And you, yes you, are no longer simply listening. You are part of this. Because her story is not finished. It continues with each person who remembers her, who sings her name in silence, with each tear shed beside still water, with each hand reaching for someone already gone. You carry her when you love too hard. You carry her when you grieve what could have been. You carry her when you stand at the edge of the world and feel the urge to let go, not to die, but to dissolve, to surrender, to become part of the river. She is not here to pull you under. She is here to remind you how deep you are, that there is no shame in being soft, no failure in loving too much, no sin in being undone by your own heart. And yet, there is warning in her too, a softness that slices, a lesson beneath the silk, because she did lose everything, because her sorrow, unchecked, became a storm that devours, because love without boundaries can become hunger, because grief, if never held, will hold you. So let her story settle in you, not as a fable, but as a pulse. Let her breath move through your own. Let her tears anoint your skin, not to haunt you, but to remind you of what it means to feel fully, to live honestly, to love, even knowing the cost. She walks beside you now, not with chains, but with wind, not as monster, but as mirror. In the hush of the night, when all things still themselves, you will hear her, not just calling for her children, but calling for you, for the part of you that weeps in silence, for the part of you that still waits by the river, hoping someone will come back, for the part of you that fears being forgotten. You are not forgotten, neither is she. She is the cry in the water, the ache in the reeds, the chill that lingers after the dream. And now you know her. Now you carry her. You are part of her story, just as she is part of yours. And long after the words fade, long after this tale has ended, you will still hear her voice, "Ay, mis hijos." That sacred lament, that final trembling note, the one that never ends, the one that belongs to all of us.